History and Heroes, a series aimed to highlight the profession's humble beginnings and the men and women who paved the road for all of us. This series is brought to you by Candy Alexander and Cailin Sullivan, your co-hosts from the Cybersecurity Refined and Feral podcast.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Refined and Feral. I'm Cailin, your co-host.
And I'm Candy Alexander.
So when we started this divergent series of Cybersecurity Heroes, Luminaries series, we wanted to recognize our profession's history so we can understand the root of the overall profession's approaches to things, significant events that occurred that shaped who we are today. And like so much in our current society, history often gets lost, and I feel and fear that we will be doomed to repeat the same mistakes that we made in the past if we don't grow and learn from lessons in the past.
Thanks, Cailin. And I am so pleased and honored to be able to introduce you folks today to Jim Reavis, who we'll be talking to, who's the co-founder and CEO of the Cloud Security Alliance. Jim and I actually have had the pleasure of knowing each other for a number of years now, where we had the pleasure of serving together on the ISSA International Board of Directors. I don't even remember what year that was, but it seems like a million years ago. But I think because of that and because of that history there, it definitely demonstrates Jim's passion for cybersecurity and his desire to give back to our community. So hi, Jim, and welcome.
Hey, Candy, it's a pleasure. And I think it was 2002, actually, that we got connected at ISSA. I looked that up. And yeah, you were like helping launch or really driving force of that first CISO executive forum that we did there. I remember that quite a bit. So yeah, it's been great, like working with you and actually learning from you too all these years.
Likewise, Jim. Absolutely likewise. So I again met you through the ISSA, but let's go back a little further than that, and tell us, how did you get into tech specifically, and then how did you get wrapped up into, back then I think we used to call it the information security profession.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been interested since sort of the dawn of like the personal computer. I got the opportunity to have one when I was 12 years old, and Commodore, it was multimedia and all that. So like writing basic programs, making it do sound, all these sorts of things. It was, I kind of assumed I would be doing something like that. And I went and got a computer science degree, and, it was a lot of COBOL and Fortran, Pascal, and on a DEC VAX. And but it actually had, looking back to it, I missed the punch card by probably just a year or so. And it had what we call the phone, which was really sort of chat, and email. And it was pretty modern back in those days. And so I actually got my first sort of experience with the NSF net, which was before that the ARPANET, and eventually became the internet. And sort of that was just a little bit mind blowing. It was used for nefarious reasons also, which was a good lesson back there. We're using it to download programs to like somewhat cheat on their assignments, and so it was kind of interesting then. But so I went straight out of college, and this had been like 1987, and went to work for a bank, and just to be a database programmer. And the IT manager, like, he quit within like a month, and I got that job. And so that was my job for the bank, and security was like something we had to be thinking about working on. It was part of my job really there, sort of from that beginning. And that's sort of how I started. And then I really just sort of realized a couple of years into that, I really liked the technology. I liked how things were starting to get internetworked. I thought that was pretty fascinating. You could see it was the dawn of a pretty big age, and that security was maybe the most interesting part of it for me, because starting to get a sense, it was still very primordial to me, but that it was more than just the technology of security. It was that interesting blend of art and science. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I just sort of did some of my own businesses and just kind of progressed through, did startups, did several different things.
It's funny actually you say it's a blend of art and science, because actually a lot of people that I know that are my age in like security professions actually like went to art school. Like a lot of people in security are very artistic, so I think it was really funny for you to say that.
Well, I think creativity is a big part of this psychology. There's a lot of other skill sets. After 9/11, actually the government went to Hollywood to have meetings on, hey, we got to think creatively about what the next attacks might be and might look like. I think a lot of us, when we're thinking about the AI age and where we're going, we rewatch the old sci-fi movies in 2001, Odyssey,
Wow.
those sorts of things. So, there's the art of war, and
Hmm.
think like your adversary. There's all these sorts of things that like people just miss if they're singularly focused on the technology itself. And that's continuing to be a cycle here, where you focus on the technology. Here's what it should do, and don't focus much on, well, here's how it might not do that and might do something else, if people aren't all thinking about things with the same sort of goodwill and everything else. So that's just it takes a good collection of all sorts of skill
Hmm.
sets, and you do need technical grounding at some point through that. But I continue to think we're going to see, and maybe even in greater numbers, people come into the cybersecurity industry, which Kenny's right. That's pretty recent that we've termed it that. But they're going to come from a lot of different backgrounds, and that's one thing I think about a lot. Is it's great that we're starting to create cybersecurity as a discipline, and you can get a degree in it.
Hmm.
But because it is all encompassing, I think that's also a challenge, and we need that broad skill set.
Well, it's interesting because I really never stopped to think about it quite like this before. That I know that I'm very like creative minded. I always have said you got to think outside the box to solve the problem, because otherwise you're doing the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So think outside the box. And I think that that's one of the challenges that we have as cyber folks, perhaps, rather than engineering. Engineering is very structured, very logical, very methodical, and oftentimes gotta admit we clash with that mindset or that demographic, because they have different
Mhm.
skills and aptitudes, and that's why I appreciate you saying we really need to look at all of the attributes and characteristics of people coming into the profession. What you think or take on that?
Yeah, we have something to learn from everyone, and I think that some of the history lessons of cybersecurity is sort of this butterfly effect, or just like an unexpected, very, very small thing that flutters its wings and causes some larger issue and cascading failures. And
Mhm.
I just, this wasn't too terribly long ago, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I had a conversation with a financial services institution about talking about locking things down and using zero trust, which I'm a big advocate of.
Mhm.
And they were talking about how like this very important, I think it was dealing with like um, um, introducing some new service that had to be very carefully controlled, and they had it even in a sanitized clean room, and it was air gapped and everything else. But then I asked, like, could someone take their phone and take a picture of the screen with this very information? And it just it's like that just messed up their day, their week, or whatever. And you just don't even think of everything if you don't have a mindset that allows you to sort of step back from like this very like focused scope of a problem, because it's usually we find that we're not thinking in the right dimensions, the right scopes of things. And so it's great to get that mixture of people who are going to look at a problem or a product from so many different viewpoints: the customer, the hacker, and everyone else.
Absolutely. It's really quite interesting, and I don't think we've hit enough on that. I know through a lot of the diversity inequality type programs out there, we've touched on it a little bit, but it's funny because I had been asked to speak at a women's cybersecurity session, and it was about differences in diversity. And my definition of diversity goes back to, speaking of digital equipment, it goes back to their definition of diversity was personality types and characteristics, as opposed to, nationality, gender, and identification, self-identification of such. And to me, that's what makes a team, is really bringing together all of those perspectives that you just touched on. So
I think as broad as you can have a different viewpoints and perspectives, just a broad sort of population. Every like major software release that like a Microsoft did, and they had a very extensive beta testing, bug fixing. The number of issues and bugs that were found post-release were always dwarfed what they were able to find beforehand, because it's just a much broader community. So we always got to be that way, and be humbled that like diversity, really every single person in the world is diverse from another person. And so as broad as we can on all those different perspectives is critical. But we do need to, I do feel like you sometimes need to like create specific metrics, whether it's gender or other things, to say that's showing that we're at least doing some of the diversity. But I would agree with you, like your view of it is like the same as I've always thought about it.
So another thing that just came to mind, I really never thought about. You inspire all of these great ideas, John. So I was thinking back to history, right? Like, remember back in the day when everybody would bash Microsoft or pick your favorite application, and how they never really, identified, any vulnerabilities or, bugs and so on and so forth. Do you think it was because their engineering and product lines, had their test scripts, set on this model? And then when it was released to the world, of course, everybody who has different perspectives and approaches, that's when they discovered all these other bugs and everything else, and that helped expand some of the QA processes to understand the exploits.
Yeah, I sort of saw them both like pre-trustworthy computing, where they were trying to build and they did an excellent job of the software development lifecycle, make it secure, and then post, once that was implemented. And you sort of have problems in both cases, but definitely you saw in those early days that security just wasn't a specifically articulated requirement, and like the input validation, things that were like college professors wrote about in their textbooks in the 70s, weren't all implemented there. But also, like post the trustworthy computing, sometimes implementing security, the way how it's implemented can introduce new bugs as well. And so how you like implement something that's doing encryption or other things. So there's a quality aspect for everything that kind of overlays, and it's separate, but really is also sort of intersecting. That's really important when you're building security. But a big part of it was like Microsoft just being so dominant at that point in time too, that they were just going to it was inevitable they were going to get a lot more flack because everything was Microsoft at that point in time. We still got a lot to do, and fortunately we're seeing some history repeating itself as we look at creating agentic AI, and this model context protocol has no security in it. Oh, well, we're moving fast. We're moving really fast. So that's still, I think, a phenomena that we'll be continuing to deal with.
Unfortunately,
for sure. So let's go to the Cloud Security Alliance. Were there any specific projects or moments? What made you think of like the future need for the development of the Cybersecurity Alliance?
Yeah. So what I had a couple of sort of, I think, precursor moments that like kind of stand out to me. And one was this person who is sort of a futurist that I met and talked to about like sort of anticipating what's next and building the right companies, the right solutions. And a simple way of putting it was like solving tomorrow's problems today. And a lot of people focus on, well, here's a problem we're having right now. And then everybody's got their focus on that. So you're probably not going to be able to differentiate yourself there. And also you need to analyze and understand, am I talking about a transient problem that is it's here right now, but it's going to go away? And so from what this person I learned is like, think about how different sort of trends will intersect and what future problem will that cause. And then if you start now, like focusing on building the solutions for that, then that's going to be really important. So the other sort of unrelated moment, I would say it's like really early 2000s. And I go to every security conference, and at like every booth, the giveaway instead of a t-shirt were these Wi-Fi detectors, because Wi-Fi was considered to be, today it's just so pervasive, it was considered to be bad. It was considered to be evil by security people, not by the rest of like the company, because it was sort of a rogue way of extending IT to make things convenient for people and move away from their desk and set up in the conference room and other things. And these Wi-Fi detectors were given for free to the information security professionals. Take it back to their office, go hunt around for them, find those Wi-Fi access points, unplug them, berate the people who installed them because they were against policy, salt the earth where they were so they could never come back. And so it kind of gave me this just sort of, this is really a dead end approach. But there's a lot of other examples, but that was really sort of the mentality of security back then, is let's prevent the business from doing what they need to do. So I had those sorts of, I guess, like default settings for me is let's solve tomorrow's problems. Let's be friendly to business. And then in just a few years after that, just get this inkling of like what cloud, let's do compute as a utility. It's a different paradigm versus having your own computer, sort of time sharing, new business model. And so what are the future problems going to be? Well, like risk management and being able to explain how this is secure, making it secure, and really focusing on like how can a business, as soon as they start seeing cloud and they see the business opportunity, how could it be that they would already have like a defensible set of best practices so they could say, oh, this is new technology and there's a roadmap on how to make it secure. So those ideas sort of said, okay, now's the right time. Let's go do that. And so it's just there was just some luck too, some bad luck for the world in that there was the global financial meltdown in 2008. So there were some unemployed cybersecurity people, and I said, "Hey, while you've got a little bit of time here, let's get together. Let's go create the first white paper. Let's go present this, and we can probably make it go viral." And it did. And so that was kind of the thinking behind it. And I still try to use that sort of default setting about things as new things come up, because we're going to continue to have new things that are going to have to work out. But cloud certainly in some cases it hasn't moved as fast as I've thought, but it's certainly, looking back, it's just so dominant now. And like I'm glad we started it when we did.
Did you have any idea? Because I can tell you, I really didn't think it would be such a huge vector within our profession. It is like beyond anything I would have guessed at. Did you have any idea, Jim?
It felt to me like it was going to be. It felt to me like a real shift, a real fork in the road. And one of the it wasn't just all my conclusion, but one of the people that I interacted with and I read one of his books was Dan Gear.
Yeah.
And Dan was talking about, he wasn't using the term cloud, but he was talking about evolutionary theory. And there was a Harvard biologist who had this theory of evolution not being sort of this slow process, but this very steady state where things don't change. And then a bunch of things come together, and then it's like a hairpin turn.
Yes.
And it was called, I think, punctuated equilibria or something like that. And so Dan kind of took that into some talks he was doing and books he had a book he'd written about data and service oriented architecture, and how like we're sort of decoupling like this all being a computer with all the data and all here, and it was just going to cause this explosion of species like evolution. And so it's going like, he can't be wrong. He's just too smart. He just looks too smart. And so so I did really feel it was going to be pretty big, but like the timing of it that's always the hard thing to predict. So I didn't know how long it was going to take.
Well, I just am so happy that it took hold, because I mean, let's face it, some of the challenges I've experienced in my past is seeing the future and trying to position organizations or professional based, member based, or company based for that future, and not being able to start the momentum for that growth. And that's really been like one of my life challenges that I still continue. Is like, I just want to scream from the rooftop, what does it matter with you people? It's coming.
Yep.
So let's talk about that for 1 second. There's something you said in 2008, there was an opportunity, and you advised people to take that opportunity and I'll say retool or reskill themselves for the future. Do you think we're in one of those phases now with an opportunity? Let's face it, you looked on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are looking for new opportunities, that between that happening and then the explosion of AI, is this an opportunity for people to use this time to retool, reskill for the next wave?
Yeah, 100%. I mean that. So I'm really in this camp that AI is very transformational to the cybersecurity profession. I'm very much in it's the assistive tool that's going to make cybersecurity professionals better. There's a part of me that also says like it's even bigger than that, and we should also be thinking about it as a new species. But if it's not anywhere sort of near that now, and I think there's so much that a cybersecurity professional can enhance their career by like start from the basics, really understand large language models, understand how the architecture of them, how they work, what all of the what a transformer is, all these things, understand the image side of generative AI, diffusion, all of these different areas, and sort of just keep building on that. Use it like as much as you can, really understand those things, because I do really think that a cybersecurity professional in the future is like that's their toolbox is going to be like it's going to be these tools, these LLMs, and they'll be sometimes there'll be a chat interface, sometimes it's going to be in agents and all of these sorts of things, but the sort of predictive nature versus the deterministic nature and how all that works, you are needing to harness a different beast in terms of the technology, both in you needing to secure it as your company uses it, but how you're going to use that. So, there's a lot of different things around it, but I one of the things that I like to just point out real simply for someone who's been head down, maybe they're in the vulnerability management position or space, they're doing red teaming or whatever else, is that you can go get a big report that says here's the high, medium, lows of all the vulnerabilities and all the assets, and try to make good decisions based on what you understand is important. There could be a Zoom call happening the same time you're doing that, and a bunch of people are talking about this asset, which seems very low risk to what you're seeing. They're saying, next week, we're going to put all of our crown jewels on this empty container. And, suddenly that's a lot more important. We don't get that kind of context right now, but the changes, the AI itself, and then just the sort of the downstream impact it's going to have. This is a great educational opportunity, and we have people getting laid off, but we are big picture really expanding this workforce, getting new entrants in, a lot of different people. So there's really understanding that. A lot of people learn to code. I'm in the learn to code camp, because I think you are going to need to understand this a lot more for a lot more jobs, to understand how these systems are working, to understand how to take advantage of them. So this is absolutely the biggest sort of retooling, re-education, new education, and even like how do we do things, re-architecting what a cybersecurity function program looks like, and the processes and everything else. So that's big disruption to it for sure. And professionals need to dive in and I like to say that the cybersecurity person should be the most AI knowledgeable person in the company, more than the developers, more than people working with it. They need to be the ones that understand this the most. And so that's a big educational challenge, but we need to climb that hill.
I agree. When I was with the ISSA International Board, I worked to do the cybersecurity professional, survey. And one of the things that I said over and over and over again is that, technology changes so quickly. And as technologists, you need to keep up with that change. But as cybersecurity professionals, you have to leapfrog that. Yes. And get in front of it. And that is nearly impossible. So really trying to take the opportunity and advantage at any point we can to try and get that advantage. And I do want to come back to this conversation because I know you have a special initiative and project. So we'll come back to this on how to, retool and retrain, reskill on that in a moment. But I want to touch back to, again, how do you, convince businesses and organizations something big's coming? I know when you talked about the Cloud Security Alliance and how you saw cloud computing as being a huge timestamp in our history as to something big happening. What hurdles exactly did you face in those years in getting buy-in and participation from, industry, from professionals and so on and so forth? Because let's face it, it grew from, you and the co-founder to what it is today, which it's highly respected and highly, participated in all your work and research. And so how did you go from 0 to 60?
A big part of it was outreach outside of cybersecurity. It was really critical. And that's part of was some of my earlier feelings of we get kind of insular in this, and we're not, historically measured on the success of the business. Really, security does enable business. It has forever. People started being able to access your money from an ATM, like 7x24 from any street corner. That was security that did that, but we didn't even understand that because we were sort of so low in the organization. But I spent a lot of time actually with more of the cloud people, already knowing the security people pretty well.
Yeah.
And then you understand how they're actually trying to transform businesses. Then you communicate to the business people, the leaders, to explain, here's how your business is going to change, or here's what opportunities are going to come with that. And so it's really sort of, then you're able to pull the cybersecurity group, which a lot of them were still sort of saying, oh, cloud's too risky. Don't use it. And a lot of people were telling me it wasn't going to be used. I actually, before I started this as my own organization, I shopped the idea of this inside of other associations. I don't want to embarrass them, but associations that and they're like, no one's going to use it to that degree. That's just too risky. So it was really getting outside of cybersecurity and really getting that different perspective that, there's industrial revolution, and there was the all the computer chips and Moore's law and all these things. So outside of it, it was a lot easier for people to say, yeah, the world's going to move in this direction. Compute is a utility. There was business. It was the Harvard Business Journal or something that was talking about, hey, compute as a utility, like electricity. Think of how that changed things. Think of how you could put your business anywhere if you didn't need to generate your own electricity, and you could plug into a grid. And so, it was really getting outside, using cybersecurity. Here's how we're going to securely enable this, so you can do this correctly, and then you can really take all the advantages of it. But you kind of had to start with, here's all the advantages, here's all the changes. And I feel like that was I feel like we would have been ignored if it had just been a bunch of security people. But even if you look at the original authors of the original white paper, I wouldn't say it was 50%, but there's probably a good 30% that were not security people, but they were really more cloud first people.
Interesting. That point actually points to, sorry, Candy, Mom. It kind of points to translating from technologists into business terms, and how, because back in those days, they didn't really necessarily have the skills to talk to the business like people are more aware now. So that's super interesting. Is that what you were going to say, Candy?
Well, what I was going to say is that's probably the most profound tip that I've heard is that you actually went, you already knew the cyber folks and we're naysayers. So don't let that happen. You're going to be running with scissors and you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to lose an eye or whatever. And then you knew, had the foresight to talk to those that were creating the technology. How are you going to create this? How do you foresee businesses using this? And what's the use case? And then going and talking to the business to help, move that movement towards adoption and then having security. That's really one of the biggest challenges I think that a lot of cybersecurity professionals have within their organizations is that they're often button heads with technologists and development and engineering, as opposed to go find out, go sit and say to them, what's the use case? Like, just the past few years have I been involved with meetings as the CISO, talking to the CTO, and then the product manager and understanding what's the use case, and then having those discussions to see where the prioritization is for security over feature and function.
Yeah.
So that really is quite profound, actually, Jim.
I think that that problem and why there's butting of heads is that, and I've got a lot of examples I've seen, and it's why I say that, for example, cybersecurity professionals need to be the smartest AI experts in their company.
Yes.
Is we are by nature more conservative, and like this control set, this way of configuration works, it prevents these risks, but we end up getting to a point often where we are not proposing the most modern types of solutions, and we're not very modernized. We're just not keeping up in our thinking. And I've got just like a real current example, large organization, and they asked like, have a CSA presentation because we are having conflicts between like our cloud team and our cybersecurity team. And the cybersecurity team was like, they were bringing some best practices sort of checklist that was really talking about like physical network sorts of controls when everything had been virtualized. And it's like, we don't have like a RJ45 plugin here that we have under our purview. This is all like terraforming and all of that stuff, software. And so it was like, oh yeah, this is why you guys are talking about the same thing, but a 10-year-old sort of physical implementation of that control. And so, yeah, that's if we are really understanding, if we're really like current in the technology, really thinking about things, then we're a lot better at sort of adapting our principles, haven't changed, to a way that we can really talk to the tech, the IT people who like they're building what the CEO wants. They're like CEOs. This is the product I want. Go build it. So it's still a journey because like we got to know we really have arrived, and people understand cybersecurity is like, it's like national security. It's maybe the biggest national security issue. Businesses understand this can take them down, put them out of business. So we have to really sort of transform. And it is a challenge when you're talking about what are the bad things that can happen in the future. But we really do have the microphone, but not all of us like really communicate it in the right way to like have the impact that we need to with the business.
So speaking of journeys, of all of the initiatives, research, and frameworks that CSA has produced, which do you think personally has had the most significant impact of like organizational cloud security posture globally, and why?
So, I mean, if we look at the metrics on what we produce, our cloud controls matrix, our framework is by order of magnitude the most downloaded. And, it's like, it's not, maybe we do things that are like a lot more like cutting edge technologically, which also they do well, but it's sort of this bridge between like here's the technology, and then here's the principles, and like here's what you need to look at, and it's at a level of abstraction that makes the most sense. But it's this way of like organizing the thinking between the people doing risk management, people trying to run the business, the people trying to secure it, the auditors trying to make sure the business is doing the right thing. And so that's been like the biggest. The second biggest download I think we get is our top threats, which we regularly sort of issue, which is more sort of like, here's where the technology is going, here's where the concerns are, here's sort of the zeitgeist of where things are. And so, and then our just overall guidance, which we haven't updated as frequently we did last year, but that sort of kind of a broad set of principles that people want to go talk about, and they get translated all over. And with AI, they're getting like we're getting to a point where we can translate them almost simultaneously. So we do have a good worldwide footprint of those things, but we're still sort of trying to be this sort of arbitrator between like bleeding edge technology trends, where's everything going. And so what we end up versus like trying to focus on any of our research artifacts is let's be agile. Anytime there's a new issue people want to talk about, let's get a small group together. Let's try and create something within a very short amount of time, like a few weeks to a couple months. Let's get the industry to react, and then let's iterate it. It's sort of that kind of agile sort of way of crowdsourcing knowledge is kind of like probably our biggest impact to like problem. Is it something we have to worry about? Yes, it is. Here's what we think the solution is. It's kind of that sort of, it's more that community activation. I think has been our biggest impact.
Yeah, I agree. So to that point, I had mentioned to you that I've been participating in the AI research working groups that you have, and I kind of didn't reach out to you, or I just went and did it because I wanted to do it as a grassroots professional, right? And let me tell you that I was so impressed by all the smart people globally that were involved in that, and I was so humbled immediately in participating in those. And one of the ways, little tip and trick for our listeners, that I felt for me best to learn about AI was to join those working groups so that I could learn hands-on, listen from some of the experts from around the world. And again, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for anyone to get involved in. It's a matter of just signing up, right?
Yep. Yeah. We welcome the community, like just the perspective of is like anyone out there that's operating on the front lines or in a research lab, they may have just a unique insight that's going to make the work we do better. And it's going to actually catch something that's a real problem that no one else has thought of. And that sort of way of just like bringing people together, and there ends up being sort of this natural meritocracy that like if someone just doesn't have like real good ideas, they're not going to get included in papers, and like the good ideas are going to be the ones that move through that. But you just don't necessarily know based on a person's credentials or anything else, like who's going to really have the insights you need. So we've always like had this, like, let's open this up. Let's have really open communities running our working groups, and then let's like work together in a crowdsourced way to find the right solutions. So I'm very glad that you contributed. I know you made great contributions, and it's been moving pretty quickly, and we've got a lot of good sort of insights, and it's almost like we gotta market that more, because I still hear people saying, well, I don't know how to do this, and so we've produced some papers on that. So that's on us to like do that better.
Yes, absolutely. It's quite profound. It's very open. It's very welcoming to everyone, and that's what excites me. There's no typical problems that you have in working with, especially an international group. Your staff are phenomenal. So again, kudos.
For sure.
Um, but let's switch gears, because now we're talking about learning through experience and sharing and all of that. And we did talk, and I promised we'd come back to this about the AI and the need, because I am with you. I feel we are on the cusp of an explosion of a change of our technological world, whatever that is. I don't think it's going to be to the extreme to take over our world. However, I think that there's a lot of cautionary things we need to consider, and that's going to happen through learning and knowing, just as your story was to go talk to those, cloud technology companies. We need to, as professionals, learn about AI and the diverse perspectives. And to that point, you have a really exciting announcement that you made, I saw on LinkedIn, about those learning opportunities and your foundation.
Yeah. So we felt like creating a foundation was like a good sort of extension to what Cloud Security Alliance has always done, because we are trying to think about the greater good in a more profound way, in a more long term way, as we are moving into this AI age. And so we are wanting to be able to sort of invest in not just like, here's what maybe some sponsors who are great, which we love, and our members would like to have us do in a relatively short term, but how can we complement that with making investments to are going to really grow the ecosystem more. And so what we are activating is the ability to take in more donations and then turn that around into providing education to like anywhere in the community, but certainly we want to look at some underserved areas as well, and make sure they're able to get access to the latest education. So we're partnering with Northeastern University to create our first like broad-based curriculum, which we're calling Trusted AI Safety Expert. And we're through donations, we're going to like build all that, and then we're gonna give away a substantial amount of that education. We're going to encourage, like, if you're a person that's got the means, buy it, and maybe you buy a class for yourself, and then we donate a class on your behalf to someone else. And so we want to create that sort of a force multiplier out there, because the future of AI, people talk about a lot, it's this alignment. How do we align how it operates with ethical behavior, safe behavior, with humanity and where it is? And this is really the key, is that we have that education, and it can't be just the haves and the have-nots there. We got to figure out how to raise that whole sort of baseline. So we got to invest to create the really good education, to get the experts to go do this, but we've really got to make it available. And so I think a foundation's a really good model to do that. So that's where we're going to be like doing a lot in terms of creating and then finding creative ways to distribute education using some sort of new models.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100% makes sense. So speaking of future, what kind of trends besides AI, unless it actually truly is just AI, do you think are going to shape the cloud security within the next 3 to 5 years?
So the thing that I'm like thinking about that we haven't really done anything yet is it extends from AI, but years ago we did like IoT, Internet of Things research. We have some really good research. Not really a lot happened with it, but it made sense because cloud was like sort of controlling those devices. So when you think about AI and you think about like catastrophic risks and all these sorts of things and where it can go wrong, is when it gets when it gets smarter, but when it gets into more kinetic sorts of activities. And so the big thing that's coming is robotics. And, a self-driving car is a robot, essentially, and we're humanoid ones as well as ones that are purpose built for manufacturing, all these sorts of things. That's a big 3 to 5 year thing that like we need to start thinking about in the same way we were thinking about the cloud and just AI in general, is how we're going to like manage, secure, control those sorts of things. I'm pretty convinced that's the really next big one. We're definitely interested looking at quantum computing and making sure organizations are quantum safe. And I just think it's a longer tail sort of there, where we see quantum and AI and other things come together and what that's going to cause. So I don't have like really good visibility, but you can see pretty clearly that it's a big sort of next step expansion of AI and large language models, is to turn that into the physical world. And so I think robotics is like a big thing our industry really needs to be focused on.
Yeah, my mind immediately went to like those surgical robots used in surgeries. Like,
Yeah.
we're talking life and death here now.
Yeah, I would definitely, if I was going under some surgery, I'd say this is not Windows 95 robot. It's, what's it using? What model is it using?
Yeah.
Everything, and has Cloud Security Alliance certified it. So
Yeah, exactly. Can I see the risk assessment, your last risk assessment report on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's exciting. I do think there's just going to be so much good that comes out of these technological advancements. Hopefully, we'll learn lessons from what hasn't worked great from technology advances in the past. But I'm really optimistic. But we've got to look at these things proactively and try to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So one last question.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that are starting out in their careers and looking to specialize in cloud security, what do you think the most crucial skills or areas of knowledge that they should focus on developing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that broad-based education, and with some technical, at least a couple classes on programming development are really good. So you do need some technical grounding. Broad-based, I find when I talk to a lot of larger companies, they say we like the community college 2 year tech school degrees for like the entry level people, and then we like to train them our way, and then maybe they go back and decide, here's where I want to focus in business. Maybe I need a business degree, or maybe I need a 4 year degree or something else. So I kind of think as fast as things are going, apprenticeships and on the job is like, get that first job in this. And so I think you can do a lot of that. So doing the Udemy and LinkedIn Learning, and doing a lot of YouTube stuff to like just really be curious and explore. My 13-year-old granddaughters, like, they're really into using AI, and there's this thing about don't cheat with it and all that, but just being really creative with it is like, it's a great way to learn about it. But that'd be like I think my general thoughts on, because there's no single one path, but I think that learning through the life learning is like a key thing for young people now. And so like go out there and get a job and go add value and learn from that.
That's so funny. I do recall, I'm snickering here because I recall it's history repeating itself. I remember I was working at Digital Equipment for engineering as a secretary or admin. And I remember sitting at a group lunch with the vice president of engineering, storage engineering specifically. And we were talking about, like college graduates and, starting out or whatever. And he had said to me, he said, Candy, sure, we look for like MIT grads or all these, really prestigious college graduates. But to be honest, what we prefer is that you come in, you have a basis, and you come in and we're going to teach you our way. So he said the first thing I tell people when they first start, okay, congratulations on, the job and thank you for accepting the offer. Now forget everything you learned in school because we're going to teach you our way. So there it is. History is repeating itself. And I think with technology, again, moving as quickly as it does, we don't, and believe me, I don't think that people should not go to college and get a degree. I think that is the baseline, right? But the expectation is that it is going to be just in time learning for the rest of your life. So same point over and over again.
I love the idea of like, you're going to be learning the rest of your life. That's not how the world was 100 years ago. You learn and then you go work out in the factory. But like, I love that idea of the world's changing. We're going to always be learners. And I think universities will find their footing in what this world means. Most of them will. But yeah, we need to question all of these things and what's the best way to learn and how do we measure that?
Absolutely. Well, before we close out our discussion here, again, this series is to highlight the luminaries of our profession. And let's face it, probably 15 to 20 years, perhaps too late on starting this series because we've lost some really remarkable people, people that had a huge impact on my life and my career, as well, I'm sure, as you and yours. So I'm going to throw some names out at you and let's share what your favorite memory is of that individual. Excuse me. Howard Schmidt.
Oh my gosh. He was so kind and such like a good mentor. I just remember just sort of a funny thing. We were traveling together and we were checking into the same hotel in London. He was starting a 3-week trip through Europe, and I was just there for 3 days. I had twice the size of luggage, and he said, "Jim, they do laundry in Europe." So it just like cracked me up. He was just like, I mean, he's this guy that is like just so highly admired and just on this. And he just like wanted to sit down and just give me some practical sort of fatherly advice. And so just loved the guy. I just so sad when he just like left us so quickly.
I agree. He touched so many people and we all have a Howard story. So yeah. How about Hal Tipton?
Oh, Hal is a guy that like I wasn't even sure he was human. I just saw him as like this is a guy who's felt like he created a lot of sort of this formalized like standards learning in the industry. And so, I just remember asking him a question and I forget which topic, but it was like 20 minutes explaining the history of why we do a certain thing the way we do it. And I just like, man, it's like, how can I kidnap you for like 2 weeks? That would have been great.
I know it. How about Don Parker?
Don, I met like before I was involved in the associations through kind of the startup stuff I was doing in the 90s. And like just the ideas that he had about measuring cybersecurity and like benchmarking things and baselining things was like actually pretty influential in the startup I did. It was called Security Portal, and how you could try and pull data and like actually have a data-driven way to look at these things. But again, just like all these people fit into that sort of first responder community mentality that they would take the time to explain what they were doing and just had great insights.
Absolutely. I miss them all dearly, and I really feel fortunate to have an opportunity to not just meet them, but to get to know them as individuals. And so, again, special, place in my heart and memory of all of them. Who have I not asked you about that you would like to mention as a history or, excuse me, a hero of our history?
Wow. So I mentioned Dan Gear, probably like the biggest sort of like influence for me, and kind of like the philosopher technologist combination that's like sort of driven me in those directions. Um, it's been more recent that I've got to know him, but um, like when Phil Venables talks, it's like, my gosh, it's like that was an amazing way of framing something that I've like spent like, a day trying to explain a certain topic. And, more of a personal one, like my father, who, World War II veteran, just a humble guy, and like just taught me, like, don't give up, work hard, contribute, be a contributor to society. Third grade education, and just to like take advantage of all the opportunities, understand where we've come from as, in civilization and in humanity and in our country, which we're just very privileged to be a part of, and go make things better. And so like I think about like the lessons he had all the time.
I think that is the perfect way to end our episode. That, don't forget where you came from and work as hard as you can with your community to make it a better place than what you came into. I mean, no better words. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Jim. It was an absolute pleasure.
Sure. I appreciate you digging up this artifact, and like I hope there was a couple of nuggets in there. And yeah, this is a great thing you're doing, and just continue on with it. And definitely would love to amplify what you're doing.
Well, thanks, Jim.